Blood pooled beneath Dr. Eleanor Morgan's fingers as she pressed them firmly against the miner's open wound, her concentration absolute despite the angry mob gathering outside the small clinic. It was 1885 in Evanston, Wyoming, and she had just become the most hated woman in town. "Keep pressure here," she instructed her assistant, Martha, a kind-faced widow who had been the only one willing to work alongside a female doctor. Eleanor wiped sweat from her brow with her forearm, careful not to smear blood on her face. The patient beneath her hands, a burly coal miner named Thomas Jenkins, had been brought in with a pickaxe wound to his abdomen after a tunnel collapse at the Union Pacific mine. "You're going to be just fine, Mr. Jenkins," Eleanor said with practiced calm, though the pallor of his skin told her his condition was precarious. "The bleeding is nearly stopped." The shouting outside grew louder. Through the clinic's small window, Eleanor could see torches flickering in the early evening darkness. "Dr. Morgan," Martha's voice trembled. "They're saying you killed the Prescott boy, that your medicines poisoned him." Eleanor's hands stilled momentarily. Young Billy Prescott had died the previous night despite her best efforts to break his fever. His father, Harold Prescott, the wealthiest man in Evanston and owner of half the businesses on Front Street, had been devastated. And apparently, he'd found someone to blame. "We both know that's not true," Eleanor said, returning to her stitching. "Billy had typhoid. I warned his father it might be too late." The clinic door burst open, slamming against the wall with such force that the glass bottles on the nearby shelf rattled precariously. Harold Prescott stood in the doorway, his face contorted with grief and rage, flanked by Sheriff Mills and at least a dozen men from town. "There she is," Prescott bellowed, pointing a trembling finger at Eleanor. "The witch who killed my son." Eleanor straightened, placing herself between the men and her patient. "Mr. Prescott, I understand your grief, but I did everything I could for Billy." "A real doctor could have saved him," Prescott spat, "not some woman playing at medicine." He turned to the crowd behind him. "How many more of our children need to die before we run this imposter out of town?" Sheriff Mills stepped forward, his weathered face uncomfortable but resolute. "Dr. Morgan, folks are mighty upset. The town council's had an emergency meeting. They're revoking your license to practice in Evanston." "They can't do that," Eleanor protested. "I'm fully qualified. I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania. My credentials mean nothing here," Prescott finished. "We want you gone by sunrise. If you're still in Evanston tomorrow, I can't be responsible for what might happen." Eleanor glanced down at Thomas Jenkins, his life literally in her hands as she held the sutures. "And my patients? Doc Sullivan from Kemmerer can be here by tomorrow afternoon," the sheriff said, not meeting her eyes. "He'll take over your practice," Martha gasped. "But that's nearly 30 miles away." Eleanor felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. There would be no reasoning with these men tonight, not with Prescott's grief so fresh and his influence so vast. She had seen this before in the last town where she'd attempted to establish a practice. The pattern was dishearteningly familiar: initial tolerance giving way to suspicion, then outright hostility at the first hint of failure. "I need to finish treating Mr. Jenkins," she said firmly. "Then I'll pack my things." The sheriff nodded curtly. "See that you do, and Dr. Morgan. Best take the morning stage for your own safety." After they left, Martha burst into tears. "It's not right. You're the best doctor this town has ever had." Eleanor finished the final sutures on Jenkins' wound, her hands steady despite the storm of emotions within her. "Help me bandage him, then we need to prepare as many medicines as we can for my patients before I leave. I won't abandon them completely." They worked through the night, Eleanor methodically packaging herbs, tinctures, and detailed instructions for each of her regular patients. As dawn broke, Martha helped her load her medical trunk and a single suitcase onto the back of her wagon. "Where will you go?" Martha asked, tears streaming down her lined face. Eleanor squeezed her hand. "West, I suppose. There's a mining settlement called Silver Creek about 60 miles from here that had advertised for a doctor. Perhaps they'll be more accepting. Or perhaps they'll discover you're a woman and turn you away at the town limits," Martha said bitterly. Eleanor managed a tired smile as she climbed onto the wagon seat. Then I'll find somewhere else. There are people who need help everywhere. As she guided her horse through the awakening streets of Evanston, Eleanor held her head high, ignoring the hostile stares and whispered comments that followed her passage. The main street led directly to the westward trail, and she did not allow herself to look back as the town receded behind her. The journey west was arduous. Late spring in Wyoming territory meant unpredictable weather, and by midday, dark clouds had gathered over the distant mountains. Eleanor pushed on, determined to cover as much ground as possible before the storm hit. Her medical education hadn't prepared her for the harsh realities of frontier life, but 3 years of practicing in remote settlements had taught her resilience. By late afternoon, fat raindrops began to fall, quickly turning the dirt trail to mud. Thunder rumbled ominously overhead as Eleanor searched for shelter. She spotted a stand of cottonwoods near a creek and directed her horse toward it, hoping to wait out the worst of the storm. The rain intensified, becoming a driving downpour that soaked through her coat within minutes. Lightning flashed, illuminating the landscape in stark relief, and the resulting thunder crack spooked her horse. The animal reared suddenly, sending Eleanor tumbling from the wagon seat into the mud. Before she could regain her feet, the terrified horse bolted, dragging the wagon with all her possessions and medical supplies away into the storm. "Stop!" Eleanor cried, scrambling to her feet and running after the wagon. "Whoa, boy!" But horse and wagon vanished into the curtain of rain, leaving her alone, drenched, and with nothing but the clothes on her back. Eleanor stood motionless for a moment, rain streaming down her face, mingling with tears of frustration. "Well, this is a fine mess," she muttered to herself, pushing wet hair from her eyes. She had no choice but to seek shelter and worry about her lost supplies later. The storm intensified as she made her way to the cottonwoods. She was so focused on navigating the increasingly muddy ground that she failed to notice the hidden washout until her foot plunged into it. Pain lanced through her ankle as she fell, and a cry escaped her lips. Gingerly, Eleanor assessed the injury not broken, she believed, but definitely sprained. She dragged herself beneath the scant protection of the trees and huddled there, shivering as darkness fell. Morning brought clear skies but no relief. Eleanor's ankle had swollen painfully, and she could barely put weight on it. Her medical bag with its bandages and medications was long gone, along with her food and water. She fashioned a crude walking stick from a fallen branch and began to limp westward, following the rutted trail. By midday, exhaustion and thirst had taken their toll. Each step became an exercise in endurance as the sun beat down mercilessly. When she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats, Eleanor nearly wept with relief. She straightened, waving frantically as a lone rider appeared on the horizon. As the rider drew closer, she saw it was a man astride a magnificent black stallion. He wore trailed, dusty clothes and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes. A rifle was secured to his saddle, and his posture radiated capability and confidence. "Hello there." Eleanor called, her voice hoarse from thirst. The rider slowed his horse, assessing her with cautious interest. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, with sun-bronzed skin and watchful blue eyes beneath the brim of his hat. "Madam," he acknowledged with a slight tip of his hat. "You seem to be in some trouble." "You could say that," Eleanor replied, attempting dignity despite her bedraggled appearance. "My wagon was lost in yesterday's storm, along with my horse and all my possessions. I've injured my ankle as well." The man dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing his considerable height. He approached slowly, as if concerned about frightening her. "That's quite a predicament. May I?" He gestured toward her injured ankle. Eleanor nodded, leaning heavily on her makeshift walking stick as he knelt to examine her ankle. His touch was surprisingly gentle for such large, calloused hands. "Bad sprain," he confirmed. "Where were you headed, miss?" "Dr. Eleanor Morgan," she corrected automatically. "And I was making for Silver Creek." His eyebrows rose at her title, but he made no comment on it. "Lucas Kincaid," he introduced himself, straightening. I've got a ranch about 5 miles from here. Silver Creek's still a good 3 days' ride, and you'll not make it on that ankle." He hesitated, then added, "You're welcome to rest at my place until you can travel." Eleanor studied him, weighing her options. She was in no position to refuse help, yet experience had taught her caution around unknown men. Something in his direct gaze reassured her, however. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid, I accept your offer." He nodded once, then retrieved a canteen from his saddle, offering it to her. Eleanor drank gratefully, the warm water the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. "Can you ride?" he asked. "Yes, though it's been some time." Without further discussion, he helped her mount his stallion, then swung up behind her. The proximity was uncomfortable. She could feel the solid wall of his chest against her back, but Eleanor reminded herself that necessity often trumped propriety on the frontier. As they rode, Lucas explained that his ranch was relatively new, established just 3 years prior. "It's not much yet," he said, "but I've got clean water, decent grazing land, and no close neighbors to speak of." "You prefer solitude?" Eleanor asked. "I prefer peace," he answered simply. They crested a small rise, and Eleanor saw a modest homestead nestled in a verdant valley. A small cabin with a covered porch stood near a sturdy barn and corral. A creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods and willows. It was beautiful in its rustic simplicity. "Welcome to the Lazy K," Lucas said as they approached. The interior of the cabin was unexpectedly tidy, with simple but solid furnishings. Lucas helped Eleanor to a chair, then busied himself building up the fire in the stone fireplace. Once flames were crackling, he filled a basin with water and brought it to her along with a clean cloth. "For your ankle," he explained. "Cold water will help with the swelling." Eleanor smiled gratefully. "You seem knowledgeable about treating injuries." 4 years with the 7th Cavalry teaches a man a few things," he replied, moving to a trunk in the corner. He returned with a roll of bandages. "These might help too." As Eleanor soaked her ankle, Lucas prepared a simple meal of beans, jerky, and biscuits. They ate in comfortable silence, the events of the past 2 days catching up with Eleanor as exhaustion set in. "You can take the bed," Lucas said, nodding toward the simple frame against the far wall. "I'll make do out here." Too tired to argue, Eleanor thanked him and limped to the bed. She was asleep almost before her head touched the pillow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin's single window and the smell of coffee. Lucas was at the small stove, his back to her as he worked. "Good morning," Eleanor said, sitting up and smoothing her hopelessly wrinkled dress. Lucas turned, offering a small nod. "Morning, doctor. How's the ankle?" Eleanor tested it gingerly. "Better, I think, still sore, but the swelling has gone down." He brought her a steaming cup of coffee and a plate with eggs and more biscuits. "Figured you could use a proper breakfast." "You mentioned Silver Creek last night. Looking for work there?" Eleanor sipped the strong coffee before answering. "Yes, I understand they need a doctor." "They do," Lucas confirmed. "Lost their last one to pneumonia this past winter, but they may not be receptive to a female physician," Eleanor finished for him. "I'm aware of the prejudice, Mr. Kincaid. I've faced it before." He studied her thoughtfully. "Call me Lucas, and I reckon you have it that. What happened back in Evanston, if you don't mind my asking?" Eleanor hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "A child died under my care, typhoid. His father was influential and grief-stricken. He blamed me, stirred up the townspeople." She set down her coffee cup. "It's a familiar story. People are willing to accept a woman doctor when they're desperate, but at the first sign of trouble, they turn on you," Lucas finished, his expression darkening. "Precisely." Eleanor managed a wry smile. "This is actually the 3rd town I've been forced to leave. I'm beginning to wonder if I should return east." "Would you be happy there?" The question caught her off guard with its perceptiveness. "No," she admitted after a moment. "I believe my work is needed here where doctors are scarce. I just need to find a place willing to give me a fair chance." Lucas nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "Silver Creek might surprise you. It's a rough place, but the miners there care more about whether you can patch them up than what you look like doing it. I hope you're right." Eleanor glanced down at her disheveled appearance. "Though I fear I've lost my chance to make a good first impression, along with my medical supplies." Lucas rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. I could ride out, see if I can find your wagon. Storm might have run it into a gully nearby. Hope flickered within Eleanor. Would you? I'd be so grateful. Happy to try, he said, rising. You rest that ankle. There are some books on that shelf if you get bored. Not much for reading myself, but the previous owner left them. After Lucas departed, Eleanor examined the small bookshelf. To her delight, it contained several volumes of poetry, a well-worn copy of Moby Dick, and surprisingly, a medical text, Grayson's Diseases of the Frontier. She settled in the chair by the fire with the medical book, losing herself in its familiar contents. Lucas returned late in the afternoon, leading a familiar horse and pulling Eleanor's mud-splattered wagon. She hurried outside, forgetting her injured ankle in her excitement. You found it, she exclaimed, limping toward the wagon. About 2 miles back, stuck in a ravine, Lucas confirmed, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Horse was grazing nearby, none the worse for wear. Your things are pretty soaked through, but I reckon most can be salvaged. Eleanor was already climbing into the wagon bed, examining her medical trunk. The leather was water-stained but intact, and when she opened it, she found the contents largely protected by their glass containers and waxed paper wrappings. Thank you, she said, looking up at Lucas with genuine gratitude. Truly, he shifted, seemingly uncomfortable with her thanks. Just being neighborly, let's get everything inside to dry out. They spent the remainder of the day laying out Eleanor's possessions to dry. Her clothes would need washing to remove the mud, but her medical supplies had indeed survived mostly intact. As they worked, Eleanor found herself studying Lucas when he wasn't looking. There was something compelling about his quiet competence and unexpected thoughtfulness. That evening, after another simple but satisfying meal, they sat before the fire. Lucas was mending a piece of tack, his large hands surprisingly deft with the awl and heavy thread. Eleanor was inventorying her medical supplies, making note of what had been damaged. May I ask you something, Lucas? She ventured after comfortable silence had stretched between them. He glanced up, nodding once. Why did you leave the cavalry? His hands stilled momentarily before resuming their work. Saw too much killing, wanted something quieter. Eleanor sensed there was more to the story but didn't press. And you found it here, the piece you were looking for. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Most days. It is beautiful, she agreed, looking around the simple cabin. Though perhaps a bit lonely. Solitude and loneliness aren't the same thing, Lucas replied. But I reckon there are times when company wouldn't be unwelcome. His blue eyes met hers briefly before returning to his work. The next morning, Eleanor insisted on preparing breakfast as a small thank you for his hospitality. Her ankle was much improved, though still tender when she put weight on it. As they ate, Lucas cleared his throat. I need to ride into Silver Creek today for supplies. Thought you might want to come along, see the place for yourself before deciding if it's where you want to set up practice. Eleanor hesitated. I'm not sure I'm presentable enough to make a good impression. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Folks in Silver Creek aren't exactly concerned with appearances, doctor. Please call me Eleanor, she said. And very well, I suppose there's no harm in seeing the town. The journey to Silver Creek took most of the morning. Eleanor rode her own horse, which seemed none the worse for its adventure, while Lucas led the way. As they traveled, he pointed out landmarks and told her about the area's history, revealing a deep knowledge of and attachment to the land. Silver Creek appeared suddenly around a bend in the trail, a haphazard collection of wooden buildings, clinging to the sides of a narrow valley. The telltale structures of a mining operation dominated the far end, with ore carts running on narrow rails to the stamp mill that thundered continuously, crushing rock to extract the precious silver. Not much to look at, Lucas acknowledged as they approached, but there's money flowing through it. Nearly 500 people call it home now. Eleanor took in the dusty main street with its saloons, general store, and various other establishments. Where was the doctor's office? Lucas pointed to a small building set slightly apart from the others. There, been sitting empty since Doc Peterson died. They drew curious glances as they rode down the main street. Eleanor was acutely aware of her wrinkled dress and hastily arranged hair, but she held her head high as Lucas had suggested. They hitched their horses outside the general store. "Let me do my trading first," Lucas said. "Then we can ask about the doctor situation." Inside, the store was well stocked for a frontier settlement. While Lucas conducted his business with the shopkeeper, Eleanor browsed the shelves, making mental notes of available supplies that might be useful for medical purposes. And who might this lovely lady be, Kincaid? The shopkeeper asked, peering at Eleanor over wire-rimmed spectacles. "This is Dr. Eleanor Morgan," Lucas replied, emphasizing her title slightly. "She's considering taking over Doc Peterson's practice." The shopkeeper's eyebrows shot up. "A lady doctor, well, I'll be." He studied Eleanor with new interest. "We've been hurting for a physician since the doc passed. Nearest one's in Evanston now." Eleanor stepped forward. "I'm fully qualified, sir. I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania and have been practicing for 3 years. "No offense meant, madam," the shopkeeper said quickly. "Just surprised is all. Folks here are desperate enough they might not mind a woman doctor long as you can stop them from dying." "That's generally my aim," Eleanor replied dryly. The door opened, admitting a harried-looking man with a miner's dust coating his clothes. "Mr. Hoffman," he addressed the shopkeeper urgently, "you got any more of that laudanum?" Jenkins took a bad fall in the north shaft. His legs broke something awful. "This here's a doctor," Hoffman said, gesturing to Eleanor. "Dr. Morgan, this is Tom Walsh, one of the mine foremen." Walsh looked at Eleanor skeptically. "A female doctor, this some kind of joke?" "I assure you it's not," Eleanor said firmly. "I can help your injured man if you'll take me to him." Walsh hesitated, clearly torn between desperation and disbelief. "She knows what she's doing," Lucas interjected quietly. "More than capable." Walsh's gaze darted between them before settling back on Eleanor. "Can you set a broken leg?" "I've set dozens," Eleanor replied. "But I'll need my supplies. They're in my wagon outside." "All right then," Walsh decided. "But if you make him worse?" "I won't," Eleanor stated with quiet confidence. They hurried to a small building near the mine entrance that served as an infirmary of sorts. Inside, a man lay on a crude table, his face gray with pain, his right leg bent at an unnatural angle below the knee. Blood had soaked through his pant leg, and the exposed bone end visible through the torn fabric told Eleanor immediately that it was a compound fracture. "Everyone out except for one person to assist me," she commanded, falling naturally into the role she knew best. She turned to Lucas. "Would you bring in my medical trunk?" As Lucas fetched her supplies, Eleanor approached the injured miner. "What's your name?" she asked, keeping her voice calm and professional. "Mike Jenkins," he gasped through clenched teeth. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm Dr. Morgan. I'm going to help you, but I won't lie, this will be painful. The bone needs to be set and the wound cleaned thoroughly to prevent infection." Jenkins nodded weakly. "Just do what you gotta do, Doc." Eleanor worked quickly, cutting away the pant leg to reveal the full extent of the injury. The sharp end of the tibia had pierced the skin, but fortunately, the major blood vessels appeared intact. She cleaned the wound thoroughly with carbolic solution from her supplies, aware of Lucas watching silently from nearby. "I'll need to administer chloroform before setting the bone," she explained to both men. "Mr. Jenkins, you'll fall asleep and won't feel the worst of it." Jenkins nodded again, his eyes fixed on her face as if searching for reassurance. Eleanor administered the chloroform with practiced precision, waiting until his features relaxed into unconsciousness before proceeding. "I'll need you to hold his shoulders," she instructed Lucas, who moved immediately to comply. "This next part requires significant force." With Lucas anchoring the upper body, Eleanor positioned herself at Jenkins' leg. With careful but firm movements, she manipulated the broken bone, aligning the fractured ends. It took considerable strength, more than most expected from a woman of her slender build, but years of practice had taught her the proper techniques. The bone slipped back into place with an audible click. Lucas's eyebrows rose slightly, but he made no comment as Eleanor proceeded to clean the wound again, stitch the torn flesh, and splint the leg securely. By the time she finished, A small crowd had gathered outside the infirmary, word having spread quickly through the small community. "He'll need to stay immobile for at least 6 weeks," Eleanor explained to Walsh as Jenkins began to stir from the chloroform. "The bone should heal well if he follows instructions, but there's always risk of infection with compound fractures. I'll leave medicines and detailed care instructions." Walsh studied the neat splint and bandages with obvious approval. "That's fine work, Doctor. Better than old Doc Peterson managed with his shaky hands toward the end." When they emerged from the infirmary, Eleanor found herself the center of attention as miners and townspeople alike regarded her with curious, assessing gazes. She straightened her shoulders, conscious that her future here might depend on these first impressions. A well-dressed man stepped forward from the crowd. "Marcus Thornton," he introduced himself. "I'm Silver Creek's mayor and own controlling interest in the mine. That was impressive work in there, Dr. Morgan. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. We've been without proper medical care since January. Our miners get injured with unfortunate regularity, and the women and children need attention too." Thornton rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "I understand you might be interested in taking over Doc Peterson's practice," Eleanor nodded. "I would, yes. I believe I could be of service to Silver Creek." Thornton exchanged glances with several other men who Eleanor assumed were community leaders. "There may be some resistance to a female physician," he said carefully. "Silver Creek is a rough place. Not all our citizens are as progressive in their thinking as they might be." "I'm aware of the prejudices, Mr. Thornton," Eleanor replied. "I've faced them before, but I'm a good doctor and I believe my skills speak for themselves." "Indeed they do," Thornton agreed, "but there's more to surviving here than just medical knowledge. We've had trouble with outlaws, claim jumpers. Doc Peterson's office was robbed twice for its medicines." He studied her with frank assessment. "This isn't Evanston or some eastern town with proper law. Silver Creek needs someone who can stand their ground when pushed." Before Eleanor could respond, Lucas stepped forward. "She was run out of Evanston for something that wasn't her fault," he said quietly. "But she didn't break. Made it nearly 30 miles with a sprained ankle after losing her wagon in that storm 2 days back. I'd say that shows some grit." Thornton's gaze shifted between them, noting something in their dynamic that made him smile slightly. "Well, Kincaid, if you're vouching for her, that carries weight. You don't speak up for folks lightly." He turned back to Eleanor. "The town council meets tomorrow evening. Come present your credentials, and we'll put it to a vote whether to hire you officially as town doctor. In the meantime, you're welcome to use Peterson's old office and equipment." "Thank you," Eleanor said, unable to keep the relief from her voice. "I appreciate the opportunity." As the crowd dispersed, she turned to Lucas. "You didn't need to speak for me." "Didn't say anything that wasn't true," he replied with a shrug. "Thornton's right, though this place can be dangerous. Being a doctor here isn't just about patching people up." Eleanor sighed. "Everyone keeps telling me I need to be tougher, stronger. In Evanston, in the town before that." She shook her head in frustration. "I'm beginning to think the frontier doesn't want female doctors at all." Lucas regarded her steadily. "It's not about being a woman. It's about surviving where the law is thin and trouble finds everyone eventually." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "I need to finish my business in town. Want to see Peterson's office while we're here?" They walked to the small building Lucas had pointed out earlier. The door was unlocked, common in frontier towns where theft was discouraged by swift, often violent retribution. Inside, dust covered every surface, but the space was well organized with examination table, cabinets, and a small dispensary area. A door at the back revealed living quarters consisting of a bedroom, small kitchen, and sitting area. "It's perfect," Eleanor said, running her fingers along the examination table. "Better equipped than my clinic in Evanston. Peterson was here 15 years, Lucas explained. Brought all this with him from Chicago, he claimed. Eleanor explored the space, mentally arranging her own supplies to complement what remained. "I could make this work," she mused, more to herself than to Lucas. "If they'll have me." "They'd be fools not to," Lucas said simply. They completed Lucas's errands and started back toward his ranch in late afternoon. As they rode, Eleanor found herself studying him with growing curiosity. He was not what she had expected from a frontier rancher, more thoughtful, less judgmental of her profession. There was clearly depth to him that he kept carefully concealed. "Why did you help me, Lucas?" she asked suddenly. "You could have simply directed me to Silver Creek and gone about your business." He rode silently for several moments before answering. "You needed help, I was there." "Many would have passed by a bedraggled woman on the trail," Eleanor persisted. "Especially one claiming to be a doctor." Lucas adjusted his hat, his expression unreadable. "Had a sister once, wanted to be a doctor too, died of cholera before she got the chance." His jaw tightened. "Always thought the world lost something important when she didn't get to follow that dream." The simple statement revealed more about him than anything he'd said previously. "I'm sorry about your sister," Eleanor said softly. He acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. "Watched you work today. You have a gift for it. Would be a shame if prejudice kept you from using it." They rode in companionable silence until Lucas's ranch came into view. As they approached, Eleanor was struck by how quickly the modest homestead had come to feel familiar, even welcoming. They settled the horses and carried Lucas's supplies inside as dusk fell. Over another simple supper, they discussed the town council meeting scheduled for the next evening. "I should prepare what to say," Eleanor mused. "In Evanston, I was never given the chance to properly defend myself." "Be direct," Lucas advised. "These are practical people. They care about results more than credentials." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "And if they vote against me, what then?" Lucas considered for a moment. "There are other settlements. Rock Springs is growing fast since the railroad came through. Or you could try north toward the Montana Territory." "Always moving on," Eleanor sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever find a place to truly settle." "You will," Lucas said with unexpected firmness. "Just needs to be the right place with the right people." The next morning, Eleanor insisted on helping with the ranch chores despite Lucas's protests that she should rest her ankle. Together, they fed the livestock, mended a section of corral fence, and tended to the small vegetable garden beside the cabin. Working alongside him, Eleanor found herself admiring his efficiency and quiet competence. "You've built something wonderful here," she commented as they paused for water. "It can't have been easy starting from nothing." "Had help in the beginning," Lucas admitted. "Old trapper named Wilkins showed me the best places for water, which grasses the cattle prefer. Couldn't have managed without that knowledge." "Is he still around, your friend Wilkins?" A shadow crossed Lucas's face. "Died last winter, pneumonia. Couldn't get him to Evanston in time through the snow." "I'm sorry," Eleanor said, understanding now his earlier comment about Silver Creek needing a doctor. "That must have been difficult." Lucas nodded once, then changed the subject. "We should head to town soon, council meetings at sundown." As they prepared to depart, Eleanor felt a flutter of nervousness. So much depended on the council's decision. She had changed into her one remaining clean dress, a practical navy blue wool with minimal adornment, and pinned her hair in a neat style that she hoped conveyed competence rather than vanity. "You look fine," Lucas said, seeming to read her thoughts as she fussed with her appearance. "Professional-like." "Thank you," she replied, surprised by how much his simple approval meant to her. The council meeting was held in the back room of Silver Creek's largest saloon, the Lucky Strike. Eleanor felt the weight of curious stares as Lucas escorted her through the main room, past tables of card players and miners drinking away the day's earnings. The back room was already crowded with town leaders and interested citizens when they arrived. Mayor Thornton called the meeting to order. "As you all know, we've been without a physician since Doc Peterson's passing," he began. "Dr. Eleanor Morgan has expressed interest in taking over the practice. She's here tonight to present her qualifications." Eleanor stepped forward, conscious of the predominantly male audience. "Gentlemen, I graduated from the Women's Medical College of Pennsylvania in 1882. I've since practiced in Colorado and most recently in Evanston, Wyoming. I have experience treating everything from mining injuries to childbirth, typhoid to gunshot wounds." A murmur ran through the crowd. A heavy-set man with an impressive mustache raised his hand. Bill Hanson, madam. I own the assay office. If you don't mind my asking, why'd you leave Evanston? That's a site more civilized than Silver Creek. Eleanor had anticipated this question. I left because a prominent citizen's son died under my care, she said honestly. The child had typhoid and was brought to me too late, but his father blamed me for his death and turned the town against me. And how do we know the same won't happen here? Another man called out. First time someone dies, you'll be moving on again. I can't promise that no one will die, Eleanor responded. No doctor can. What I can promise is that I will use every skill and resource available to me to heal those in my care. I don't abandon my patients, even when circumstances become difficult. Thornton nodded approvingly. I witnessed Dr. Morgan's work yesterday with Mike Jenkins. That compound fracture would have likely meant amputation if we'd had to transport him to Evanston. Several council members nodded, clearly impressed. Then a tall, hard-faced man stood from the back. I've got concerns, he announced. Mining camp's no place for a woman alone. Medicines attract thieves and a female doctor. Well, she attracts other kinds of trouble. That's enough, Carter, Thornton said sharply. It's a legitimate concern, Eleanor countered calmly. And one I've considered. I'm aware of the risks, but I believe the benefit I can bring to Silver Creek outweighs them. With respect, Doctor, Carter continued, it's not just about your safety, it's about whether you can handle trouble when it comes. Peterson kept a shotgun under his examining table and wasn't afraid to use it. Lucas, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. I need someone who knows how to fight. All eyes turned to him. What's that supposed to mean, Kincaid? Someone asked. Silver Creek needs a doctor who won't break under pressure, Lucas elaborated. Someone who can stand their ground. Dr. Morgan's already proven she can do that. His gaze swept the room. She was run out of town unjustly, lost everything in a storm, injured herself, and still kept going. That shows more grit than half the men in this room. Eleanor stared at him, stunned by the forceful defense from the typically quiet man. That's all well and good, Carter argued, but when claim jumpers come looking for laudanum, pretty words won't stop them. I can shoot, Eleanor said, surprising herself as much as the room. My father taught me. I'm not expert with a gun, but I can defend myself if necessary. This statement caused another ripple of murmurs through the crowd. Perhaps a demonstration would be appropriate, Thornton suggested. Tomorrow morning, Eleanor hesitated. While she had indeed learned to shoot, it had been some time since she'd practiced. Very well, she agreed, hoping she wasn't making a terrible mistake. The meeting continued with questions about her medical experience and approach to various conditions common in mining communities. Eleanor answered with confidence, drawing on her training and practical experience. By the time Thornton called for a vote, she felt cautiously optimistic. The council will render a final decision after tomorrow's demonstration, Thornton announced. In the meantime, Dr. Morgan is authorized to continue using Peterson's facilities for any emergent cases. As they left the saloon, Eleanor turned to Lucas. Thank you for speaking on my behalf. Again, he shrugged, just told the truth. About needing someone who knows how to fight, she asked with a small smile. I'm not sure I fit that description as well as you suggested. Different kinds of fighting, Lucas replied. Some use fists or guns, others fight with determination. You've got plenty of that. They rode back to the ranch in the gathering darkness, the stars emerging as brilliant pinpoints against the vast Wyoming sky. Eleanor found herself increasingly aware of Lucas's presence, beside her the steady rhythm of his breathing, the subtle shift of his weight in the saddle. There was something deeply reassuring about his quiet strength. At the ranch, they settled into what had become their evening routine, a simple meal, followed by quiet conversation before the fire. Tonight, however, Eleanor sensed a tension in Lucas that hadn't been present before. Are you concerned about tomorrow's demonstration? She asked. He glanced up from the coffee cup he'd been staring into. Been thinking, if the council votes against you, what will you do? Eleanor sighed. Move on, I suppose, as I've done before. She studied him. Unless you have another suggestion, Lucas set down his cup, his expression serious. I do. Stay here. Here, Eleanor repeated, not certain she understood his meaning. At the ranch, he clarified. Silver Creek still needs a doctor, whether the council recognizes it or not. You could practice from here. I've got the space. The offer stunned her. That's incredibly generous, Lucas. But it would be highly improper for me to live here unchaperoned. People would talk. People always talk, he dismissed. Then, more hesitantly, unless. There was a more permanent arrangement. Eleanor's heart began to race as she realized what he might be suggesting. Lucas, are you? I'm not good with words, he interrupted, standing abruptly and moving to the fireplace. Never have been, but these past few days. He turned to face her, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. I've come to admire you, Eleanor, your courage, your determination. The way you care for others without hesitation. Eleanor rose as well, drawn to him by the raw honesty in his voice. We barely know each other, she said softly. I know enough, he replied. Out here, people learn to recognize quality quickly. It's a survival skill. He took a step toward her. I'm not offering just because of the council. Been thinking about it since I saw you work on Jenkins. The way you kept your head, how steady your hands were. You're proposing marriage, Eleanor clarified, needing to hear him say it directly. Lucas nodded, his blue eyes intent on hers. I am. It's sudden, I know that, and I'm not asking for an answer tonight. Just consider it, please. Eleanor studied his face, seeing the sincerity there, the quiet hope. She thought about the connection that had formed between them so quickly, how comfortable she felt in his presence, how he had defended her without hesitation, how he seemed to understand her in ways few others ever had. I will consider it, she promised. But Lucas, I need you to understand something. I'm a doctor. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. I can't give that up, not even for marriage. I wouldn't ask you to, he said immediately. This territory needs good doctors more than it needs proper society rules. I'd never stand in the way of your practice. His understanding touched her deeply. How many men would support a wife with a demanding profession, especially one often viewed with suspicion and hostility? Thank you for that, she said softly. It means more than you know. They stood close now, the firelight casting warm shadows across their faces. Eleanor was acutely aware of his proximity, of the quiet intensity in his gaze. When he slowly reached out to touch her cheek, she didn't pull away. Whatever you decide about the proposal, Lucas said, his voice low, know that you have a place here for as long as you need one. The moment was broken by a pounding at the door. Lucas stepped back, his hand dropping to his side as he moved to answer it. A young man stood on the porch, his horse heaving from hard riding visible behind him. Mr. Kincaid, Mayor Thornton sent me. There's been an accident at the mine cave-in, multiple injuries. He asks that Dr. Morgan come right away if she's willing. Eleanor was already moving, retrieving her medical bag. How many injured? She asked, her mind shifting immediately to professional assessment. At least 5, madam, maybe more still trapped. Lucas was already heading for the barn. I'll saddle the horses. Eleanor, there's a lantern by the door, we'll need it. The ride to Silver Creek was tense, their horses pushed to a gallop despite the darkness. The young messenger filled them in on what little he knew. A support beam had given way in the east shaft, trapping miners and causing part of the ceiling to collapse. When they arrived, the mining operation was chaos. Lanterns illuminated the area around the shaft entrance, where men worked frantically to clear debris. Others emerged coughing from the dust-filled tunnel, supporting injured comrades. Eleanor dismounted quickly, medical bag in hand. Where are the wounded? Company office, someone directed her. Most serious cases first. The mining company's office had been converted to a makeshift hospital. Eleanor entered to find 5 men laid out on improvised beds, tables, desks, even the floor. Their injuries varied from minor lacerations to what appeared to be serious crushing wounds. I'm Dr. Morgan, she announced to the room at large. I need clean water, all available bandages, and strong men with steady hands to assist me. To her surprise, there was no resistance, no questioning of her authority. The emergency had stripped away any prejudice about her gender. She was simply a doctor, desperately needed. Lucas was at her side immediately, rolling up his sleeves. Tell me what you need, he said. Eleanor quickly assessed the injured men, prioritizing the most critical cases. This man first, she decided, kneeling beside a miner with a crushed chest and labored breathing. Lucas, hand me my stethoscope, then prepare a morphine solution 1 grain to 2 ounces of water. They worked seamlessly together as if they'd been partners for years rather than days. Lucas anticipated her needs, following directions without question, his steady hands never faltering even when faced with gruesome injuries. The night blurred into a continuous stream of medical procedures, cleaning wounds, setting bones, suturing lacerations, and monitoring those with potential internal injuries. 2 more injured miners were brought in around midnight, having been trapped deeper in the shaft. By dawn, Eleanor had treated 9 men in total. 1 had died despite her best efforts, his injuries simply too severe for the limited resources available. The others were stabilized, though 3 remained in critical condition. As the sun rose, Mayor Thornton entered the office, his face gray with exhaustion. "Dr. Morgan," he said, taking in the scene of organized medical care, "I don't know how to thank you." Eleanor looked up from the splint she was adjusting. "No thanks necessary, Mr. Thornton. It's my job." "And you've done it admirably." He glanced around at the wounded men, all properly treated and resting as comfortably as possible under the circumstances. "I believe we can dispense with today's shooting demonstration. The council has seen all it needs to regarding your qualifications." Eleanor exchanged a glance with Lucas, who stood nearby, his shirt sleeves rolled up and hands stained with blood and antiseptic solution. "Does that mean?" "The position is yours if you still want it," Thornton confirmed. "We'll make it official at the next council meeting, but consider yourself Silver Creek's doctor as of now." Relief and satisfaction washed through Eleanor. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I won't let the town down. I believe that." Thornton hesitated, then added, "There was some concern about your safety living alone in Peterson's place, but after seeing Kincaid here working alongside you all night." He nodded toward Lucas. "I gather those concerns may be addressed soon enough." Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks. Had their growing connection been so obvious? "We're discussing arrangements," she said diplomatically. Thornton smiled knowingly. "Well, discuss away. In the meantime, is there anything you need for these men?" "Regular monitoring," Eleanor replied, grateful for the return to professional matters. "I'll stay with them today, but I'll need volunteers to help watch them in shifts after that." "Consider it done," Thornton assured her. After he left, Lucas approached Eleanor. "You should rest," he said quietly. "You've been working for nearly 12 hours straight." "I will soon," she promised. "Once I'm sure everyone is stable," he nodded, understanding her dedication. "I need to check on the horses, then I'll bring back food. You need to eat." When Lucas returned an hour later with bread, cheese, and coffee from the hotel restaurant, Eleanor gratefully accepted the meal. They sat in a quiet corner of the office while volunteers watched over the patients. "You were amazing," Lucas said simply. "The way you handled everything calm, focused, even with men dying under your hands." Eleanor sighed, the weight of the night's events settling on her shoulders. "I lost one. You saved 8 others who might have died without you," Lucas countered. "That's no small thing." She met his gaze, finding strength in his steady presence. "Thank you for your help. I couldn't have managed alone." "Partners work better together," he replied. The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond their medical collaboration. Eleanor took a deep breath. "About your proposal, Lucas, you don't need to answer now," he interrupted. "It's been a long night." "No," she said firmly, "I've made my decision." She reached across the small space between them to take his hand. "I'd like to accept if the offer still stands." Lucas's expression transformed, hope and joy breaking through his typically reserved demeanor. "It stands," he confirmed, his fingers tightening around hers. "You're certain it's not just gratitude or exhaustion talking?" Eleanor smiled. "I'm certain. These past days have shown me more about you than months of conventional courtship could have. Your kindness, your strength, your respect for my work." She shook her head slightly. "I never expected to find someone who could accept me as both a woman and a doctor, but you do, without question." "Because that's who you are," Lucas said simply. "Both parts make you Eleanor." He hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic vulnerability, I think I might be falling in love with you. Never felt anything like this before." The admission touched Eleanor deeply. "I'm falling in love with you too," she confessed. "It's happened so quickly, but it feels." She searched for the right word. "Right," Lucas finished for her, and she nodded. "Yes, it feels right." Lucas brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "When?" he asked. "When should we marry?" Eleanor clarified. "Soon, I think. I'd like to establish my practice properly, and—" She flushed slightly. "There will be talk regardless, but less if we don't delay too long." 2 weeks, Lucas suggested. "Gives us time to prepare, but not so long people start gossiping more than they already will." Eleanor nodded. 2 weeks, and I'll divide my time between the practice in town and the ranch. It's not so far that I can't ride in daily for regular patients and for emergencies." She gestured to the injured miners around them. "Well, they seem to know where to find me." Over the following 2 weeks, Eleanor settled into her new role as Silver Creek's doctor. Word of her skillful handling of the mine disaster spread quickly, and any lingering doubts about her abilities seemed to evaporate. She cleaned and organized Peterson's old office, combining his remaining supplies with her own to create a well-equipped medical practice. Lucas rode into town daily, ostensibly on ranch business, but always finding time to visit Eleanor's office. They were careful to maintain propriety in public, but the knowing glances from townspeople suggested their courtship was the worst-kept secret in Silver Creek. Preparations for their wedding were simple but meaningful. Eleanor ordered a new dress from the general store, not white, which seemed impractical for frontier life, but a soft blue that Lucas said matched her eyes. The town's only minister, a practical man named Reverend Williams, agreed to perform the ceremony. The night before the wedding, Lucas invited Eleanor to dinner at the Silver Creek Hotel, the closest thing to a fine restaurant in the mining town. They sat at a corner table, somewhat self-conscious under the curious but generally approving gazes of other diners. "Having second thoughts?" Lucas asked quietly when he noticed Eleanor's pensive expression. She shook her head. "Not about marrying you. Just thinking about how much has changed in such a short time. 3 weeks ago, I was being run out of Evanston in disgrace. Now I'm the respected town doctor of Silver Creek, about to marry a man I barely knew a month ago." She smiled wryly. "Life takes unexpected turns." "For the better this time," Lucas said. "Yes," Eleanor agreed. "Definitely for the better." Lucas reached across the table, taking her hand. "I have something for you." He placed a small velvet pouch in her palm. Eleanor opened it to find a simple gold band set with a single small diamond. "Lucas, it's beautiful," she breathed. "When did you—" "Had it sent from Rock Springs," he explained. "Belonged to my mother. My father gave it to me before he died, said to save it for the right woman." His eyes held her steadily. "That's you." Tears pricked at Eleanor's eyes. "Thank you." "I'll treasure it always." She hesitated, then added, "I wish I had something of equal meaning to give you." "You've given me plenty," Lucas assured her. "A partner, a future that's not just me and the livestock talking to each other." His mouth quirked in a rare display of humor. "Though I expect the conversations will be more interesting with you around." Eleanor laughed, marveling at how this quiet, reserved man had captured her heart so completely in such a short time. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the harsh Wyoming landscape softened by early summer wildflowers. The ceremony was held in the small church on the edge of town, attended by what seemed to be most of Silver Creek's population. Eleanor was touched by how quickly the community had accepted her not just as their doctor, but as one of their own. Martha had arrived from Evanston the previous day, tearfully embracing Eleanor and expressing her joy that her friend had found both professional acceptance and personal happiness. She stood as Eleanor's witness during the simple ceremony. As they exchanged vows, Eleanor was struck by the certainty in Lucas's voice and the steady warmth in his blue eyes. When Reverend Williams pronounced them husband and wife, Lucas leaned down to kiss her with surprising tenderness, his hand gentle against her cheek. The celebration afterward was boisterous in true frontier style, with music from a fiddle player, dancing in the street, and plenty of whiskey flowing. Eleanor found herself passed from partner to partner in traditional dances, while Lucas watched with a small, contented smile from the sidelines until Martha practically dragged him onto the makeshift dance floor to claim his new bride. "Not much for dancing," he murmured apologetically as they moved together. "You're doing fine," Eleanor assured him, enjoying the solid feel of his hand at her waist. "Better than my medical school professor who had 2 left feet and invariably stepped on my toes at every university function." Lucas chuckled, the sound warming her heart. "Set a low bar for me, did he?" "The lowest," Eleanor confirmed with a smile. "You could only improve upon it." As dusk fell, they slipped away from the celebration, riding together toward the Lazy K Ranch, their home now, not just Lucas's. Eleanor felt a flutter of nervous anticipation as they approached the familiar cabin. While she was hardly naive about what marriage entailed, the prospect of sharing such intimacy with Lucas, a man she had known for such a short time, despite the depth of their connection, was both exciting and somewhat daunting. Lucas seemed to sense her thoughts. As he helped her down from her horse, his touch was gentle, his expression reassuring. "Nothing happens tonight that you don't want," he said quietly. "We have time." The consideration in his words brought tears to Eleanor's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Inside, Lucas had prepared for their return. The cabin was clean, with fresh wildflowers in a jar on the table and new curtains at the windows, Martha's handiwork, Eleanor suspected, from the busy day before the wedding. "It looks lovely," Eleanor said, taking in the small changes that made the bachelor cabin feel more like a home. "Made some changes to the bedroom too," Lucas mentioned, a hint of shyness in his voice that Eleanor found endearing. "New bedding, thought you might like it." Eleanor moved to the bedroom doorway and smiled at the sight of the bed, now covered with a colorful quilt that replaced the plain blankets from before. A small dressing table had been added to one corner with a mirror and space for her personal items. "When did you do all this?" she asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. "Been working on it since you agreed to marry me," Lucas admitted. "Wanted it to feel like your home too, not just mine." Eleanor turned to him, her heart full. "It's perfect." Lucas stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "May I kiss you, Mrs. Kincaid?" The new name sent a thrill through her. "Yes," she breathed. "Please do." His kiss was gentle at first, but deepened as Eleanor responded, wrapping her arms around his neck and pressing closer. When they finally parted, both were breathing unevenly. "I love you, Eleanor," Lucas said softly. "Never thought I'd find someone like you." "I love you too," she replied, the words feeling right, natural, despite how quickly they had come to this moment. "And I never expected to find a true home out here in the wilderness." Later, as they lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, Eleanor marveled at the journey that had brought her here. The pain of being forced from Evanston had led her directly to this happiness, a practice where her skills were valued, a community that accepted her, and a husband who loved and respected her completely. "What are you thinking?" Lucas murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "That sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we need to be," Eleanor replied. "If I hadn't been run out of Evanston, you'd never have met me," Lucas finished, "and I'd still be talking to the horses." Eleanor laughed softly, nestling closer against his side. "A tragedy averted, then?" "Definitely," he agreed, pressing a kiss to her hair. In the year that followed, Eleanor divided her time between her thriving medical practice in Silver Creek and life at the Lazy K Ranch. The town continued to grow as the silver mine expanded operations, bringing new families and businesses to the once rough settlement. Eleanor's reputation as a skilled physician spread through the territory, occasionally bringing patients from as far away as Rock Springs or Kemmerer. She treated everything from mining injuries to childhood illnesses, childbirth to bullet wounds, earning the respect of even her most initial skeptics. Lucas's cattle operation prospered as well. With Eleanor's encouragement, he expanded the herd and hired 2 ranch hands to help with the increasing workload. The Lazy K became known for its quality stock and fair business dealings. Their partnership flourished both professionally and personally. Lucas often assisted Eleanor with difficult cases, his steady hands and calm presence invaluable during emergencies. In turn, Eleanor helped with ranch operations, applying her scientific knowledge to improve breeding practices and treat livestock ailments. 8 months after their wedding, Eleanor confirmed what she had begun to suspect: she was expecting their first child. Lucas's reaction to the news was everything she could have hoped for, joy mingled with protective concern, his hand gentle against her still flat stomach as he promised to be by her side through everything to come. As her pregnancy progressed, Eleanor began training Martha, who had relocated permanently to Silver Creek, to assist with routine medical cases. The arrangement allowed Eleanor to reduce her workload while ensuring the town's medical needs continued to be met. On a crisp autumn day, after 18 hours of labor with Martha attending and Lucas refusing to leave her side despite convention, Eleanor gave birth to a healthy boy they named William Lucas Kincaid. As she held their son for the first time, Eleanor felt a completeness she had never known before her life as a physician, now beautifully balanced with her role as wife and mother. "He's perfect," Lucas whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed down at their child. "Looks like you around the eyes. Poor child," Eleanor teased weakly, exhausted but radiant. "Let's hope he gets your height at least." Lucas laughed softly, brushing a kiss against her forehead. "Rest now, you've done the hard work." In the quiet moments that followed, as Lucas sat beside her with their newborn son sleeping in his arms, Eleanor reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From being forcibly expelled from Evanston to finding acceptance, love, and family in Silver Creek, it was more than she could have imagined possible on that rainy day when she'd lost everything. "What are you smiling about?" Lucas asked, noticing her expression. "Just thinking about that day you found me on the trail," Eleanor replied. "When you said you needed someone who knows how to fight." Lucas's smile deepened, the rare full expression that she treasured. "Best decision I ever made, bringing you home." "Mine too," Eleanor agreed, reaching out to take his hand. "Coming home with you." As their son stirred against Lucas's chest, Eleanor felt a surge of gratitude for all that had happened, even the painful parts, to bring her to this moment. She had fought for her place in the world, for the right to practice medicine despite society's expectations, and had finally found where she truly belonged. Not in a particular location, but with this man who had seen her strength from the beginning, who had valued rather than feared her determination, who had offered partnership instead of dominance. Together with their son, they had created something precious, a family built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and deep, abiding love. "We should rest while he's sleeping," Lucas suggested, carefully transferring William to the cradle he had crafted by hand during Eleanor's pregnancy. As he settled beside her on the bed, wrapping a protective arm around her still tender body, Eleanor nestled against his familiar warmth. "I love you," she murmured, sleep already claiming her. "Love you too, Dr. Kincaid," Lucas replied, his voice a comforting rumble against her ear. More than words can say. In the years that followed, the legend of Silver Creek's Lady Doctor and her steadfast rancher husband became a well-known tale throughout the Wyoming territory. They would face many challenges together: harsh winters that threatened the herd, disease outbreaks in the mining community, the arrival of 2 more children who filled their home with noise and joy. But through it all, their partnership remained unshakable: 2 people who had found in each other exactly what they needed. Someone who knew how to fight, not just against external threats, but for what truly mattered in life. And in that fighting, that mutual standing of ground and refusal to surrender, what was important, they discovered the greatest peace either had ever known.